Welcome to the CigarFati universe. Today, we are diving into the absolutely incredible story behind La Casa del Habano, probably the world's most famous Cuban cigar boutiques. It's a tale of passion, of vision, and of one man who saw an opportunity that would literally change the cigar world forever.
So that's the big question, right? How does one guy's passion manage to build a global empire? We're going to explore that today. And let me tell you, it's a journey of incredible vision, of serious perseverance, and, as you're about to see, a pretty significant sacrifice. So let's get right into it.
All right, so our story kicks off almost 4 decades ago. Our hero is a man named Max Gutmann, a German-Mexican entrepreneur who's on a trip to Europe. He doesn't know it yet, but this one trip is about to set off a chain reaction that will completely redefine how we all experience premium cigars. Now, you'd think his first Cuban cigar was, love at first sight, but nope, not even close. His brother-in-law hands him a Partagás Lusitania. That's a big, powerful double Corona. And for a total newbie, it was a lot, a real challenge. But then, a few days later, he tries something else, a Hoyo de Monterrey Epicure No. 2. And that was the moment. The clouds parted, the angels sang, he was completely hooked. That single puff changed the entire course of his life.
Okay, so Gutmann is filled with this brand new passion. He gets back to Mexico totally ready to dive headfirst into this amazing world of Cuban cigars. But he immediately smacks into a huge problem, a problem that would end up defining his life's mission.
You really have to understand, back then, finding premium Cuban cigars in Mexico was next to impossible. You couldn't just stroll into a beautiful tobacconist. Nah, your only real shot was maybe a tiny, sad little selection at an airport duty-free shop. For a guy who just found his new passion, this was beyond frustrating.
And this, right here, is where the story pivots. A friend of his, who traveled to Cuba for work, started bringing back boxes for him. Then one day, this friend brings him the entire Cubatabaco catalog. Can you just imagine seeing that for the first time? Gutmann himself said he felt like a kid in a candy shop. And as he's staring at all these incredible, unobtainable cigars, a revolutionary idea starts to click into place.
So how do you take that kid in a candy shop feeling and turn it into an actual business? Well, he broke it down. First, he identified the problem, scarcity. Obvious. Then, the big idea. What if there was a store that sold only Cuban cigars? But his vision went way beyond that. He didn't just want a retail store. He wanted to design an experience, a cultural hub for people who love this stuff. And from that vision, he and his friend built the whole brand. The name, La Casa del Habano, the iconic logo, the whole shebang.
Now, having a brilliant idea, that's one thing. But making it real, that is a whole other battle. And for Gutmann, forging that very first casa was a long, tough journey that was going to test his persistence like you wouldn't believe.
The amount of sheer effort this took is just incredible. The idea pops into his head in the early 80s, but it then took nearly 3 years of brutal negotiations with Cubatabaco, that's Cuba's state tobacco monopoly, just to get them to say yes. 3 years? I mean, most people would have just given up, but not Gutmann. He was relentless, and finally, in 1990, they struck a deal.
And here's a fascinating little piece of history for you. Gutmann's plan was always to open the first store in Mexico City, right? The capital, makes sense. But Cubatabaco had other ideas. They insisted, absolutely insisted, that the first location had to be in Cancun. And why? Because it was strategically way closer to Cuba, which made it much, much easier for them to keep an eye on this new, totally unproven concept. Pretty clever move on their part, you have to admit. So, the dream finally became a reality. The doors were open. But this moment of triumph, well, it would very quickly lead to a painful choice between his passion and his pocketbook. On December 1st, 1990, the doors to the very first La Casa del Habano in Cancun swung open. Gutmann called it the proudest moment of his entire career. And the success was instant. I mean, the concept was a massive hit right out of the gate. But just 8 months later, a surprise shows up that's going to force him into a really, really painful dilemma. He finds out that a second La Casa del Habano is opening, this time in Paris. The president of Cubatabaco comes to him and, to put it simply, asks him to sign away all the naming rights to the brand, the concept, the name, the logo, everything he had created from nothing. So he's staring down this stark choice. Does he fight for compensation for his creation, for the money? Or does he protect the future of his passion project, the name or the money? And Gutmann's response? Well, it's the stuff of legend. He chose his passion over profit. He signed over all the rights to Cubatabaco without asking for a single dime.
His only request was this one simple, beautiful line. Just remember who your first one was, and you never forget your first love. It's just an incredibly selfless act, one that ultimately secured the brand's future across the globe.
So that fateful decision, that choice to put the dream ahead of personal gain, it paved the way for a global empire. Let's just take a quick look at the massive legacy that one decision left behind.
Today, because of that vision, and because of that incredible sacrifice, there are over 155 La Casa del Habano locations worldwide. Just think about that for a second. From one little shop in Cancun to a global phenomenon.
And that number, 155, it isn't just a statistic. It represents a true global empire that spans more than 60 countries. You can walk into a casa in London, in Tokyo, all over the world, and every single one of them traces its roots right back to that one store in Cancun.
So what was the secret sauce? What was the big idea? The core concept was actually simple, but totally revolutionary. The goal was never just to sell cigars. It was to create temples for cigar worship, to transform a simple purchase into a true cultural immersion. That was the whole key.
And to make that philosophy a reality, Gutmann introduced innovations that are now the absolute gold standard for any serious cigar shop. I mean, think about things we completely take for granted today. Proper climate-controlled storage, right? Highly educated tobacconists who actually know what they're talking about? A kind of ritualistic, high-touch service? He pioneered all of it. He turned a simple shop into an immersive cultural experience. The man was a true revolutionary.
So when you really look at it, the story of Max Gutmann isn't just about cigars. It's about seeing a problem and creating not just a product, but an entire experience around it. Which kind of leaves us with a final question to think about. In a world that is so full of simple, forgettable transactions, what experience is out there right now just waiting for someone with enough passion to create it? If you liked it, if you enjoyed it, if you learned something new, subscribe to the channel because we're just getting started.